Fast forward a few years, and all of a sudden we start to see regulators around the world, in Switzerland, in Australia, New Zealand, in Canada, in England, not the US yet, starting to open up to the idea that there's productivity available in not just Bitcoin. Bitcoin is one software, but also Ethereum as a transactional platform, and Polygon, and HBAR, and Helium, and Avalanche, and all of these other software projects. And so for example, in Canada, they were the first to allow an ETF, an exchange-traded fund, be traded publicly with the underlying asset being Bitcoin. Now, obviously, when I see that, I'm realizing things are changing. And I'm looking at our deal flow and saying, look, everybody, I'm a believer in, I've watched the value of my Bitcoin from 2017. It was one of my best performing assets, obviously, and Ethereum. And I said, look, we should start to explore a relationship with the regulators and find out what we can do in the different geographies, because they're going to change their policy at different paces. Right now, the most advanced on earth is Canada. They have just licensed the first crypto exchange tied to a dealer broker. So that's a company called BitBuy. I'm very proud to say that I'm an owner of that. We acquired the company through a public company called WonderFi, one of my digital assets that I've invested in. And we're also, we've gone to Switzerland, we've gone to Lithuania, we're in Costa Rica, we're talking to the UAE. All of these areas are licensing new crypto exchanges. I really like the infrastructure of the internet. My whole point is, what changed is the regulator changed. They have become far more accommodative. And obviously, I had a chance this weekend to talk to some of the senators here in the United States about their policy, and they're beginning to form committees to start exploring regulating stablecoin like USDC, regulating Bitcoin, regulating Ethereum. So I want to be part of that dialogue, and I'm very optimistic that I will be. And I think that this is finally the regulators are saying there's too much value in these platforms. Let's look at it.
Talking about regulators now, obviously in the NFT space, it's a wild west. It's a gold rush of the century. That's how I look at it. But at the same time, it's a place where people get scammed. They lose their money left and right. Now, that's when kind of a central authority is good to have. But somehow, do you feel that kind of having a regulation is against what crypto was actually meant for, like this, decentralized system, no authority kind of thing? How do you kind of, work your way around those narratives?
Yes, I mean, you are right. There is a narrative. You're 100% right. The founders of this theory and the founders of the coding and the founders of the first capital raised had very much a decentralized mandate. And that's true. However, let's think about it collectively. All of us that are advocates of cryptocurrencies that have made investments in crypto. One of my businesses indexes for sovereign wealth funds, including where you are right now, and the Middle East and the UAE, and they're the largest pools of capital in the world. They virtually own no crypto. The reason they don't own it is that it's not regulated, and they are under mandates, their sovereign mandates or their pension mandates, to only invest in regulated securities. Now that's the other side of the equation, because if they were allowed to, they would invest, typical mandate in a $50 billion, $100 billion fund, we give you an example, would be no more than 20% of the assets in any one sector, and there's 11 sectors in the S&P, and no more than 5% of the fund in any one name or any one company. So when I asked them, how would you like to index for cryptocurrencies? If they could buy Bitcoin, they would put a weighting right now on between 1% and 3% of Bitcoin. Now, when you have $100 billion under management, 3% is a ton of money. So if you want to see your Bitcoin traded $250,000 or $500,000 a coin or a token, you're going to have to let these institutions into the market. They are the incremental buyers, and they don't trade. They'll buy Bitcoin as an asset and hold it in perpetuity, which makes the whole environment more valuable. And so the reason you should pivot from the opinion, if you have the dogma of saying, I want to stay decentralized, no regulator, you should think about that. If they were to regulate, and the biggest regulator on earth that sets policy for most markets, financial markets, is the SEC in the United States. And that's why they're taking their sweet time and going very slowly. They know what's going to happen. Right now, those exchanges I talked to you about in Canada and the United Arab Emirates only trade two assets, Bitcoin and Ethereum. No staking, no lending, no margin. They're just starting their journey as regulators to allow to see what happens. But as time passes, my investment thesis on Bitcoin and Ethereum and all the other level 1, level 2s that I own is when they get regulated, including USDC, which is the stablecoin of choice I use for my corporation, I'm limited by my own compliance department to only have 5% in it because they consider USDC a highly volatile equity. I don't think of it that way, but that's how it's regulated currently. So we're going to have to get a ruling on stablecoins too. But my point is, when that happens, the value of all your assets will increase geometrically because of the amount of capital that will be willing to invest in them. So that's the balance of that argument you got to think about.
That's real. I never thought about it that way. Kevin,
really
that
cool.
is like, oof, like, just head just exploded. That was amazing. Thank you so much for that.
Now, speaking of, I mean, that's, when it comes to regulating crypto, it does make sense. But now, speaking of NFTs specifically, and NFTs have, they've been around for a while, but on the grand scheme of things, it's still the very early beginning. The adoption is very limited at this point, with the major exchange being OpenSea at the moment, and it's somewhat too centralized. Looking at the NFT space, what kind of regulation do you see in that space on the horizon, with your insights into the NFTs?
Yes, I have had a chance to talk to the committees about this. The biggest question for NFTs, and you're right, it's a very fast-growing asset class, is whether it's a security or not. When an NFT in its smart contract has a royalty associated with transfer of ownership, it is distributing capital. And that generally is interpreted as being a security, no different than a bond paying interest or a stock paying a dividend. But we haven't had a ruling on that yet. More concerning right now is what you said earlier, that there's a lot of scamming going on in the NFT space. So it'd be much better for all of us, and I'm a huge believer in NFTs, if we could find some way of providing a new level of security so that you as an owner who have made an investment, whether you've done it on a centralized or decentralized wallet, should have some sense that there's security and an auditable position and a path to understand, when something does go awry or it's been stolen, that there is a way to pursue it. And we don't have that right now. So I would say investments in much more secure wallets and better functioning wallets would expand the NFT space geometrically.